Greetings, dear ladies. I am KRYON of Magnetic Service. I will say this one more time. Don't let the deeper voice fool you. There is no gender on the other side of the veil. None. Just honor. Being a human is specific to Earth. The test you've all gone through has to do with free choice. And when we say free choice, we mean that to be a consensus of consciousness based upon where you decide as humanity to take it. We don't interfere. Part of this test is of energy on the planet. Where it starts is one thing, where it goes to is another. Now, I've said those things before. I want you to relax with me just for a moment. Meliha, again, is with us. Your Akash rings with the truth of what I'm telling you. You're interested in Lemuria. You should be. It's in your Akash. More than just in your Akash. Can you imagine how deep the etching is, metaphorically, of something you experienced as one of the first times you were on this planet, taught by those who seeded you from the Pleiadians, actually being with them, actually having the feeling inside of being so comforted, seeing the benevolence in everything they did, trying to emulate that which you would call mastery. To some of you, they seemed angelic. Their teachings were amazing. And this is where you learned what you know. Can you imagine bringing that forward to today, rekindling it, and continuing? That's what the Sisterhood is. Therefore, there is a feeling of you with you, because this is what you did. It is where you were. Channel after channel, we have described you sitting in the alcove with the stones, with the water. It is almost body temperature. Around in the circles, doing the various ceremonies around the circles, birthing, singing. All of these kinds of things. We've talked about the men as they go fishing. Depending upon what you bring them through your prayers and what you learned from the seven sisters. That you temper the energy of the catch. Can you imagine being a male, being responsible for feeding the village by chance with fish? By chance. But knowing that with the Sisterhood behind you, directing you that day on which direction to go, it was more than chance. They depended on the women for everything. They delighted in this shared responsibility that they took. But just like now, it would seem like the women were doing everything. Not only were they responsible for the spiritualness of the entire Lemurian continent, but they also raised all the children. You had plenty to do then, just like you do now. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the planet. And again, through thousands and thousands of years, gradually through free choice, things changed because you changed. Lemuria was the launching pad of the Akash. In other words, all that you had, all the children, including you, only had one lifetime, and then on to a bigger continent, rebirthed, probably most of you in Europe. What do you think your Akash was like there? Now follow the logic and the reasoning with me. You find yourself back on the planet. This is lifetime 2. You only have one lifetime to remember, only one. And it was a stellar one. It then literally sit upon you. It sits upon you in a way that you can't shake it. You return to the ways that you had. And you develop a sisterhood. Here's another sisterhood. And it's not one that has the Pacific Ocean around it, so it's got to be modified. As history goes forward, it's not seen as something that is necessarily needed by the men. They're not going out and hunting and gathering. They're not fishing. You start to build buildings and have commerce. There starts to be an entire shift in the way things work. Women's business is then something that is suppressed. It is starting to be lost, not from your side, dear women, but from the men. It is understandable that the energy would go in this direction first. What happened was it never recovered. It got worse. This is free choice. This is what we talk about today as slowly beginning to reverse itself as the population of Earth sees and appreciates the role of women in a sacred place. You are recognizing that. You're waking up to perhaps the possibility that again could be women's business. It's got to start somewhere. And it starts with you. You are not necessarily going to do the same thing, but the concept is there for you to meet, discuss, celebrate. It has nothing to do with women's power. It has everything to do with women's sacredness and leadership for all. There's a difference. You can recognize the difference between gender power and wise leadership. Humanity is attracted to wise leadership. Everywhere it is appreciated and it's seen. You do understand you are your own ancestors. What happened? What took place? Where did it go? There is so much to discuss, but let me just give you a brief overview. Now we have the sisterhood underground. You still have this in your Akash to meet and to work with that which is the planet, with the grids, all the things that the Lemurian experience and the Pleiadians taught you is in one Akash. Now it's in two. Now it's in three. It builds with you until there is a time when you cannot sustain it any longer. It is a threat to the men to have women meeting together and doing powerful things. It ceases to exist. Oddly enough, the men take the mantle and they have a brotherhood. And the brotherhood becomes many things over the years, including what you call today the Masons. You might say the Masons are an exact duplicate, if you want to say, of what business of women used to be. They took the mantle from women. Now, the odd thing is, where did they get this idea? Well, you've got to remember you were not just one gender. When they were women, they remembered it. They were able to plug it in, women's business to men's brotherhood. There's more. There was a resurgence in many places on this planet of what you will loosely call the sisterhood. These resurgences you can track back and actually see in various parts of the earth. Some of them were directly south of Hawaii. You were reincarnated into South America, perhaps. So not always was it Europe. You will find women's business, some remnants of what appears to be women's sacred ceremony in South America. It is a remnant of what you started in Lemuria. But there's one place on this planet that seemed to be ripe for this to continue, and it did. It's in Europe. It never really stopped. And whereas it was beat up forever, and for thousands of years either terminated, perhaps it was never remembered, lifetime after lifetime, you lost it, Now you're rekindling it because you are having an active Akash. But there was one place where it remained for a very, very long time. And that one place is going to be visited soon by Meliha. And it's called Greece. There's women's business, goddesses, in Greece. It never stopped. There was an underground. There were some things even involving the Illuminati. Women's business was there too. We didn't say it was necessarily fair. We told you that you were rekindling something that worked before. This is hard to describe to you, where something sacred would then be rekindled into something that perhaps had motives that were not. This is how life works. Your Akash was remembering what you were able to do, not necessarily where you did it. This new energy is rekindling it, a word I've used now 5 times. This rekindling, that's 6, is a remembrance of the core. What did you do? Really, what did you do? How did you do it? But more than that, the feeling of pride that you were needed to do it. You were needed to do it. Humanity needs you to do it again. Meliha, when you return to Greece, you will be greeted well. The energy will remember you. There will be some intensity in certain places. Just get ready for it. As you remember that it started necessarily with part of what you accomplished with the Sisterhood. Meliha was the last leader of the Sisterhood in Lemuria before it started going under. We told you this. We also told you that she did not leave. She couldn't. She was ready to go down with the island if it went all the way down. She went to her favorite mountaintop to await that which was inevitable for Meliha. She had lived over 3 lifetimes longer than most of you, enhanced by the temple of rejuvenation at the top of the mountain. She awaited there as it sunk and stopped. She was then stranded, if you call it that, in paradise on the island of Kauai. This is her story. What happened to you? Where did you go? Were you part of the Greek Sisterhood? Did you remember it? You are all of those lifetimes. You are your own ancestors. How many times did you go through this? It's all starting to work now in your favor as you sort it out in your memories of the Akash. And as you figure out, number 1, you were there, not necessarily together, over many lifetimes in Lemuria. That is to say, that each one of you had one lifetime over a long period of time. So their chances are you were not necessarily part of the same sisterhood there. Number 2, you had the original seed information. You still have it. What does it tell you about what I'm saying? Is it accurate or not? Number 3, you were honored in what you did. Humanity needed what you did, mothers. All of you. I want that to stick. Those are the 3 areas. I want that to stick. Nothing else. Not what you did later, not what it became, but the original. There's more at a later time. And so it is.